Being able to can your own fruit is a wonderful experience, taking a little bit of control of your food source. Being able to pick your own fruit is an added bonus. Today we're going to take you to a blueberry farm. We're going to pick our fresh blueberries and then take you step by step on how to make blueberry jam. We're going to get started with our blueberry canning in our outdoor kitchen today. We had such fun on a gorgeous day picking the blueberries that I thought it would be nice to bring you outside for the blueberry canning. Now we live in the South, it's a gorgeous spring day. No matter where you live, there'll be a certain time of year where you too can create an outdoor kitchen. There's no better way to feel connected to the outdoors and to the food that you're preparing than being in an outdoor kitchen. My outdoor kitchen is nothing more than a picnic table. If you have a picnic table and you have a standalone burner, you're good to go. That's what we're doing. I've also done this on a camp stove. You probably could do it on a grill as well, so there's no end to how you can create a standalone outdoor kitchen or a makeshift one for the afternoon. Now what we're starting with is I have washed our blueberries. You'll want to make sure to watch the video on how to care for your blueberries. Now our blueberries have been in the refrigerator for about a week since we went to that farm and picked at Artisan Acres. We picked about 6 pounds of blueberries. A lot of them have been eaten along the way, but I have 5 cups here that I'm going to work with today. Now, it depends on the pectin that you're going to use, and you always want to follow the directions on the pectin that you're going to use. There's lots of recipes for canning, and yes, you want to follow the recipe as far as your ingredients, but when it comes to the pectin, you want to follow the directions on the label. Now we are actually using Pomona's pectin, which I've shown you in our equipment video, and that's what we're going to be using today. So we're going to be using a calcium and a pectin together. The calcium is our binder, which creates the gelling in our jam. I've washed our blueberries. I've kind of picked through and made sure there weren't any stems left in here because we don't want stems in our jam. And I came up with 5 cups. Now my recipe calls for 4 cups of mashed berries. So if I think about it and mashing them down, it's gonna come out just about right. So I'm gonna put the blueberries in my pan. Now I'm using a good size saucepan, stock pot. And I wanna make sure that it is a little bigger than what I want it to be. I don't want an overflow. I've had that happen where you have sticky, gooey jam all over your stove that you have to scrape off with a scraper. So make sure it's a little bit bigger than you want to have. And what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and turn this on, because our first step is going to bring the berries to a boil. I'm gonna go ahead and let these sit, and it calls for mashed berries. So I'm gonna use just a plain old potato masher, and I'm gonna mash on these berries while I'm heating them up. You could leave the berries whole if you wanted to. Blueberries are one of the easier fruits to work with because they really burst when they start to heat. So if you didn't want to spend the time mashing, you could just go ahead and put them in the pot, let them start getting hot and bursting, and they're pretty much going to break down on their own. So if this is your first time canning, blueberries to me have the least amount of work. They don't have stems we have to cut off. They don't have to be scrubbed for seeds. You just rinse them off real good and you're good to go. Now the next step you're going to want to do while you're waiting for your blueberries to heat up is you're going to consider the sugar. We're going to need some sugar, and again that's according to your directions on the package. Now my directions for Pomona's pectin, and the reason why I like to use Pomona's is because I can use less sugar. Now I have boys in the house, they love homemade jam, and they could go through a jar a day if you let them. So I kind of want to control the amount of sugar. And a lot of fruit at their peak are going to be pretty sweet as it is. So I want to cut down on that sugar. For this recipe, I'd like to cut the sugar in half, and so using Pomona's is going to allow me to do that. With around 4 to 5 cups of berries, I'm going to add 2 cups of sugar. That still may sound like a lot, but that's less than half of what a regular pectin would call for. Now this is going to call for me adding the calcium water to the blueberries. So I'm going to go ahead and add calcium water to the blueberries, 2 tablespoons. I keep the calcium water in my refrigerator pretty much all season long. It comes in a powder form. So I mix it up and just keep it in the fridge for when I'm ready to do that. And since I have a little bit more berries, I'm gonna add just a tad more. So when you think about Pomona's pectin, you're adding liquid to liquid, okay? So I'm adding liquid calcium water to my liquid blueberries. So I have my 2 cups of sugar that I measured out. Now what I need to do is add my 2 tablespoons of the pectin. And the pectin is in a powdered form. And with Pomona's, you want to mix liquid with liquid, dry with dry. So we want to make sure that we get that pectin mixed in really well with our sugar. So I've got 1 tablespoon, whoops, some's blowing away in the wind. 2 tablespoons. And again, I'm gonna add just a tad more to be on the safe side. You can keep it in the little package that it comes in, but I use it a lot, so I have a little jar that I put it in. And I'm going to mix up my sugar really well. We wanna make sure that pectin is mixed in. We want to bring our blueberries to a full rolling boil. And as the blueberries start to heat up, they create their own juice and they start bursting. And I'm also going to add about a tablespoon of lemon juice to this recipe. Actually, a tablespoon. Our blueberries have come to a full rolling boil, and now we're gonna add our 2 cups of sugar. Now I'm using white sugar. You could use honey, any other sweetener that you'd like. And with Pomona's pectin, you don't have to add sugar at all if you don't want to. You can just follow those directions. This is what I had on hand. Sometimes here in the South, our fruit seasons are kind of short and it really depends on the weather. Here in Florida, we can have nice cool days and then we can have hot days, and the blueberries really like a little bit of cool weather here. So our blueberry season really starts in March and April, and it might only last a few weeks or it could last a few months. So if you're interested in picking, you gotta get out there and do it. Otherwise, you can catch them at the farmer's market and at the grocery store. We're going to stir this constantly because we do not want the sugar to burn on the bottom. And our goal is to bring it back to a full rolling boil for at least a minute, and then we'll be ready to jar it up. If you did a small batch canning, you really from start to finish would take about 2 hours, whether you're in your outdoor kitchen or inside in your home kitchen. It's a great place to start, and my motto is even if you mess up and it doesn't end up gelling, use it as blueberry syrup. It's still edible. Now we're ready to pour up our jars. So we need a funnel, first of all. And I just took the jars out of my hot water. I had them in a stock pot boiling in hot water to sterilize them, along with the lids. And then I just turned them upside down here on my cloth, lined them up, ready to put in our jars. All right, so this is what we're gonna do. We have our pot of blueberries right here. I'm gonna take a jar and turn it upside down and put our funnel inside, just like that, all right? Then I have a soup, what I call a soup scoop, and we're just gonna pour our hot jam into our hot jar. And we want to leave about a 1/4 inch headspace. So I've got a little bit more room here. That's good, just like that. All right. Now I'm gonna take my lid. First, I wanna make sure that there's nothing on the rim. Our rim needs to be clean and dry. We don't want anything to prevent a seal. Then I'm gonna take my lid and put my lid on, and my ring. And we have our very first jar of blueberry jam. Now I'm gonna do this for all the jars, and I'll show you in different sequences up close how to do that. Now we're gonna put these off to the side until we're ready to water bath them. And the water bath is what's gonna draw out the air and make that popping sound that we love to hear when we're canning. And we'll go through that with you step by step. For the next step in our canning process, we are gonna put our jars that we just finished into the canner to water bath. So I'm gonna take my canner, which inside has the lifter and holder. I'm going to put enough water in here so that it covers the top of the jars. And we're gonna bring it to a boil first. Then I'm gonna use my jar lifter, and I'm going to lift the jars like this. I'm going to place them down into the canner, and I'm going to boil them for 10 minutes. And after 10 minutes, I'll come back, I'll use my jar lifter again. I will lift them out onto the counter, and I will wait at least overnight to listen for that famous popping sound that we'll get. For our water to boil in the canner, I thought I'd share a little history with you about canning. You know, canning's been around for thousands of years in different forms. Even families in the 20s, 30s, and 40s were still canning regularly at home. You know, I've heard stories of community canning camps here in Florida. I'm a Floridian, a 4th generation, and I've heard stories of families gathering together, those pioneering families, from small communities and moving from homestead to homestead and doing canning camps. You would bring everything that you needed to survive with your family for 1 week. You'd set up camp in the community homestead that you're doing. The men would go out into the fields and gather all the harvest, and the women would do the canning and prep for all the food to put up for the whole year for that family. I think that's where the term putting it up came from. They would use wood stoves, they would use fires out in the yard, they use everything available to bring that food to harvest. It was really important for families here in Florida to have that food put away, because gardening in Florida can be pretty tough, and they had to learn a lot of things along the way. I think a community canning camp would be a pretty cool idea, even in today's world. It's a way they could gather together as a community, fellowship, help each other out in a time that everything needed to be done, and putting it all together. Now that is what I call homemade. Thank you for joining us today as we did outdoor canning here at the Modern Homestead Revival. We hope you enjoyed the blueberry canning recipe and how to do it step by step. And if you've never canned before, we hope this encourages you that anyone can can. Starting with blueberries is a good choice. We showed you how easy the fruit is to work with, and you get some yummy jam in the process. Being able to can your own fruit is a wonderful experience. Having the ability to put away food